Dad, we're alive!
And we're live! Yes, I'm slightly late on that one.
Too slow!
Right, yes, too slow. So, folks, what I'm going to do, you know the title, you know what it's about. First of all, self-promotion. You probably think, Ben, you do enough of that. I've seen all your links on Facebook. Right, I'm going to start now. I've rearranged things on my channel. I'm just going to show you where other videos you might like that are related videos. So hopefully, you should be able to see Enneagram and personality playlist. You don't have to scroll that far down. It's below the, you've got uploads, then it's got vids with male guests, vids with female guests, and you've got this Enneagram and personality.
I think you should not quote me as Enneagram expert Jonathan. Like I'm
that's my opinion.
That's a bit.
Yeah, but there was this thing though. I mean, who qualifies as an expert?
Probably someone who's actually taken.
You can say anyone's an expert.
Well, yeah, but there are official qualifications and stuff that I don't have.
I never put credentialed, Jonathan. I just put an expertise. You have expertise in Enneagram, in my opinion.
I could get sued, or you could get sued. But I suppose
expert.
I suppose
if you get professional or credentialed.
If they sue you, it's okay. I suppose so they don't have to sue me. I'm not the one claiming it.
I could include Enneagram amateur expert Jonathan.
Okay.
Everyone's an amateur.
Expert, isn't it? Okay.
I'll put expert. Right, and then it functions in focus. Enneagram in general, there's a nice video on there, folks. And it's socionics people watching. There's a nice video on there that actually it was my idea. I said to Jack Aaron, why don't we do an Enneagram versus socionics video?
Yeah.
Right. Then Enneagram type 4, Enneagram type 6, and of course these ones are the model G ones we've done so far. So you can see that yourself, folks. Now, Enneagram type 6 has this lady in it. So she's in the Enneagram type 6 video.
Oh, there's a handsome man in a little box.
Yes. So if you want to watch that video, this is the main reason for watching.
That's not a very flattering picture. It looks better from a distance.
But one time, folks, what I did to Jonathan was he was using his back scratcher, and I thought that is a fantastic image. Oh, use that as a thumbnail, and he says, "No, you wouldn't have it." So I've done that self-promotion. You can talk about. You have a new book.
I have.
Let us know about it.
As in, I have bought a new book, not that I've wrote a new book.
Yes.
Firstly, if you're watching this, like, share, and subscribe. Please.
Oh yes, I forgot. Yes, there's some good links in the description.
Yeah, it's a good job I'm here.
Yes.
Support this channel.
I would like to have a support button like Jeff has for people to donate.
Okay, so the book I've recently bought. I think I actually bought it before the last hangout I did with you, but never mentioned it. It is Discovering Your Personality Type, the Essential Introduction to the Enneagram. It is really simple, straightforward introduction by Reese and Hudson.
Yep.
It's got short descriptions of each of the types. It's not the best, it's not the most in-depth, but it does give you a brief look at each type. Right. And it also includes the RETI, which is the Reese and Hudson Enneagram test, Enneagram type indicator. So right. It's a decent test to do.
The books I recommend are The Enneagram Made Easy. This is a funny book, and it has some details in it, some good details as well. And so it's entertaining, good for introducing to people who you think the MBTI might be a bit complex for them, and this is a way for them to wet their feet in typology. And it's a fun book. So, I mean, if someone reads 10 pages of this, they're probably going to read the rest of it. They had a sequel called Are You My Type, Am I Yours? I think this one came out in about 94, I think. This one came out in 95. Risa and Hudson did a massive. This is like one of the co-bibles of Enneagram personality types by Risa and Hudson. I think Jonathan has this in his top 2 or top 3 or 4, along with the Beatrice Chestnut book.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in it. I haven't read every single Enneagram book, so don't.
Right.
That seems like a good one.
Yeah, a lot of them. And then another entertaining book, Rennie Barron. She's the funny one out of Barron and Regeley. And she wrote this book in 98, What Type Am I? MBTI book. And it'll have some things in the back with the crossover with Enneagram. Now, she wrote this one in 2004, The 4 Temperaments, the Kersey Temperaments. And she has a section in here, folks, on how the temperaments work together with the Enneagram. I put there. Very good. So, for instance, there's a bit in there that says that thinking 4s are rare. Right. Just saying. All right.
We're actually having a discussion with someone in the Enneagram group about. I think I can get up.
Thanks for not tagging me.
I can tag you right now if you want.
Yeah, you can tag me in that. Yes, that'd be good.
It was.
And there's also mentioned there's a very good group out there, folks, but I'm not going to tell you about it because it's a secret invite-only group.
Yes, so boo to you.
Yes, and it's very hard to get into.
Yes. I had to ask very nicely. Yeah, it's actually about. I actually started a post saying just post music about different Enneagram types. So I had the song "Mr. Vain" by Cultured Beat for Enneagram 3, for instance, and it turned into a discussion about Enneagram and correlation. So yeah, I've tagged you.
Right.
The person I was discussing it with, basically, she's taking a rigid stance in this whole issue of type correlation. She used to be a bit more. She says she used to be a bit more flexible, but now she's a bit more rigid. So type 1s, which we're discussing today, are always J types. SJs are NJs. Type 2s are feelers with strong FE. Type 3s are any extrovert. Type 4s are any feelers with good FI and enough intuition. So she says that she doesn't think that ENFJs can be type 4s, but there are ENFJs with type 4.
Someone needs to introduce her to some INFPs. A lot of INFPs can be 1s.
Well,
principled.
Well, I know a lot of INFPs some INFPs can type as 1, but I mean that's the thing, because they're factoring in not just that, but also tri-type and instincts and things like that. When you factor those in, it might reduce it. Because, like I said, I've never typed as a 1. I've always typed as a 5 or a 4.
Yeah.
There's only actual descriptions and factor in the instincts.
Yeah, but I'm just sort of like thinking in an overview of like you've got the reformer. There's like an ethical basis there, and there's an ethical basis.
I wouldn't associate ethical and socionics with Enneagram type. I wouldn't say it's that, because the most common is actually the most common type to type as type 1 is an ISTJ. And that's obviously sensing or
right. But I'm just saying that this person was saying it's only the J types.
Yes.
Type as 1. But I'm just saying it is possible for, say, INFP as a P type to type as a 1.
They might type as the one. The question is, are they a 1 or is it a mistype? That's what she would say. And I've seen INTPs typed as 1, but when I look at the INTPs in question, like I've seen Thomas Jefferson typed as a 1, and I've seen Immanuel Kant typed as a 1. But when I look at them and their lives and stuff, I see more of a 9 wing 1 maybe. So There's also someone in the group who was, she's either an ENFP or an INFP, and she used to type as 1, but on closer inspection to say she was probably a self-preservation 4, which can look like a 1.
Right.
So
what I'll do is I'll give you this overview, folks, of the Enneagram, and it's a clockwise thingy.
All right. Also, type 5, introvert, mostly thinker and or TI valuing. Type 6 is anyone. Type 7 is extrovert, almost always EP. Type 8, type 8, not a feeler, usually with strong TE.
Yeah.
Type 9, introvert, often censor, with at least 2 DSI. Not sure I totally agree with some of her things, but I most understand where she's coming from. I'm sure there are extroverts who are type 9, especially ENFPs. But
yeah.
The main thing was she was wondering if ENTPs who can be, or ENTJs can be type 5, because you sometimes get them, but with ENTPs it would be the logical subtype who would be the type 5s. But whatever.
Oh yeah, you can have, definitely you can have an ENTP type 5. Yeah. But they would be the type, I would imagine, to
be
learn
mistaken.
lots of things concurrently. And more in breadth of knowledge.
They'll be the type that looks most like an INTP. Without
that makes sense.
Without a doubt. There's a few people I think are ENTPs who might be type 5s, but
I actually see a certain type of INTJ as more Enneagram 5 than INTP, because the INTJ is very much interested in mastery.
I should think type 5 is usually associated with introverted thinking, and INTJs obviously do have strong introverted thinking anyway. So it's I would say that there's a certain type of INTP that is definitely type 5, but there are
the
stereotypical INTJ is also usually a 5. There's the intuitive subtype of INTJ is usually a type 5.
Yeah.
But the logical subtype usually a type 6 or some other type.
It's just that the emphasis on mastery for the Enneagram 5.
Well, it's more.
Whereas
it's more knowledge, but whatever. This is a talk for another day. We're not talking about 5s. We're talking about me.
Yes, you're right. That's right.
Myself. Glory to the
what we could do, so you've seen some of these slides. Which one should I put on? How about the table and then, so we can look at the table, and then we can look at this thing, which is like an enormous load of things. But this sort of like breaks it down for, if you look at the type 1 before me, maybe we could go through all of these.
Okay. All right, so type 1.
And you can also explain these things to me, like ego fixation.
It's not a term that's in the books much.
Right, okay.
Well, let me.
And if you don't agree with the way this is set out, please let us know.
I always have a problem with description one way or another, so it's not.
Because this is from the Wikipedia entry.
Yeah.
So if you see a thought, then it'll be educating.
The ego fixation is more like the way they are describing it. Sounds like this is your dark side and your reaction to it. So the dark side, the ego fixation of a 6 is cowardice, and so they respond with loyalty and shows of bravery and kinderphobic.
Is that like the disintegration?
Not quite. It's more like their weakness. See, a lot of the Enneagram stuff, especially the older stuff, is It sees Enneagram as your weakness, not as your strength. That's how you should think about it. And all of it is responses to, like, your personality itself is almost an ego defense. Like, your personality is just a set of defense mechanisms. Some of the older Enneagram stuff sees it as may or may not. It's got some merit to it. I don't know if it's totally true, but that's where all of this is coming from. And it's almost like sometimes it's getting quite Buddhist, as if you're trying. The goal should be to destroy your personality, become knownness. So that's where all of the ideas are coming
Liberate yourself from
yourself.
Was like the idea was like these are patterns, these are tendencies, and to become aware of them and liberate yourself from these motivations.
Yeah. Anyway,
a way of liberation, I suppose. They might have seen it like that, as that.
Yeah, but whether you agree with that is another issue. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, resentment in a type 1. That's more to do with resentment type 1 is more to do with you want things to be perfect. You want everyone to do it perfect. You're annoyed that other people are enjoying themselves more than you are because you're being too serious. That's where part of it comes from. In fact, you know what? I'm going to read out the description of the Enneagram 1 because that might be a better introduction. It's a short description from the book because on my Kindle and computer. Okay. Type 1 exemplifies the desire to be good, to live up to the highest ethical standards, and to effect positive changes in the world. While a number of types care about achieving goals, ones are particularly aware of how they achieve their goals. Were they honourable? Did they use their resources wisely? Were they fair and truthful? Ones are people of high standards, and they expect themselves and others to live by those standards as much as possible. They tend to see things in terms of long-range objectives, and they can be aware of how current actions might affect future situations. For example, ones are often at the forefront of battles to improve environmental standards or to make people aware of healthier lifestyle choices. Most ones report feeling a powerful sense of mission, a deep feeling of purpose that they remember from their early childhood. They sense that they are here for a reason, and unlike some other types, they have a fairly clear idea of what that reason is. This sense of mission impels ones to rise to the highest standards, to make personal sacrifices, and to evaluate themselves regularly to see if they are falling short of their ideals. They feel that they must live a balanced, sensible life in order to have the clarity and inner resources necessary to fulfill their purpose. Ones also have deep convictions about right and wrong, what is just and unjust. They are often dedicated to reform and social causes because they feel personally obligated to improve the world and leave it a better place. They put themselves in the line for their values and ethical convictions, even if it means risking their jobs, their fortunes, or their very lives. Ones are convinced that there are indeed some truths and some values that are worth both living and dying for. To accomplish their missions, ones maintain self-discipline and do their best to practice moderation in all things. While ones focus their attention on serious life issues, their high standards can also be directed to less significant matters, although they may seem equally important to ones at the time. They can become extremely upset, for instance, if their spouse or one of their children fails to clean up after themselves adequately after using the bathroom sink. Ones are nothing if not thorough and well organised. Some ones express this as an extraordinary concern with neatness, the kind of people whose socks and underwear are folded neatly, whose file lockers are labelled and filled alphabetically, and whose pencils are all sharpened. Other ones focus on perfectionism in other areas such as punctuality, ethical standards, political or religious ideals, office protocols, or uncovering misdeeds and untruths. While ones tend to see themselves as people of logic and reason, they are often driven by strong feelings and impulses, usually experienced as personal convictions. Because they feel so strongly they must accomplish their life mission, they conclude that they must be serious and determined and must not waste time. They can become very strict with themselves, feeling that they must always be working toward their ideals, making progress, and pointing out how things could be improved. They are extremely conscientious about how they use their time and resources. Under pressure, time becomes a major interpersonal issue for ones. They insist that they and others must be punctual, efficient, and particular about details. They make lists, organise things, and prioritise their activities constantly. Their sense of obligation, however, can make them feel heavier and more burdened. Consequently, they begin being afraid of making a mistake because they want everything to be consistent with their strict standards. At such times, others can perceive them as overly rigid and perfectionistic. In brief, ones want to be right, strive higher and improve everything, to be consistent with their ideals, to justify themselves, and to be beyond criticism so as not to be condemned by anyone. Ones do not want to be proven wrong, to make mistakes, to allow sloppiness, to be with people they perceive as lazy or not serious, to be in chaos or in situations that seem out of control, or to be embarrassed by emotional display. Take a drink.
Okay. At one point, did you mentioned something about people cleaning up and stuff, and it reminded me of a line from Greg Gutfeld about Donald Trump, where he said, "Trump is less popular with women than leaving the seat up."
Yeah, I saw you post that. Anyway, as many people have noticed, that sounds quite ISTJ as well, stereotypical.
Oh yeah.
So that's a bit different from me because I'm an INFJ type 1. So there's a lot of stuff that I do relate to, but some of it is quite strict or.
I absolutely love the intersection of Jungian type with Enneagram. Really makes it if it's not rich enough already, those two things coming together.
Yeah.
Really.
I also don't agree with that. There's also that bit at the end where it says to be with people they perceive as lazy or not serious. That's funny because I know that a lot of type 1s end up with type 7s relationship wise, and they get on quite well.
Well, what we can do is we'll go back to that, but some of the things that you talked about, and it depends if you want to talk about them or not. Things there. So, Jonathan, what about your purpose, ideals, those things? Let's put some meat on the bones, like the things that are real Enneagram Type 1 beliefs.
Well, first I'll say that other types can be like that. Other types can have strong beliefs and want to make the world a better place. And I would say, actually, I think type 6s are often more outspoken than type 1s in a lot of ours, and other types might be more outspoken. Now, I'm a Catholic, so most of my beliefs relate to that in terms of I do have that sense of mission that right or wrong, so it has all to do with things like, being charitable, being nice. I'm interested. I keep getting drawn to international stuff, like what's going on in the wider world, like there's of wars or disasters or things like that. I tend to focus more on that than on domestic issues.
Just remind the audience and remind the socionics people, don't get too carried away with quadras determining people's values. Values can be determined by things outside of typology. Jonathan's just given a fantastic example here of how his faith also determines his values.
I would say it's the centre of my values.
No, but also along with.
I say that all my other values are almost like they have to be incorporated into.
Yeah.
That's like it's been a long. It's almost like a city. I would say my main city is like there's a few. Just like in a city, there are a few core buildings, a few core locations. Over time, some more will be built, some more. Ways there'll be a lot of adaptation. The city would grow, and there'd be a network of roads that would incorporate other beliefs and other opinions. So it's. I don't want to lose the central character of this, that my beliefs, my faith, but at the same time, I don't want to be so rigid or so puritanical, which is a temptation sometimes, that I discard everything else. I want to adapt to them as much as possible. That's my opinion. That's more of a healthy one. An unhealthy one would reject all that.
Do you have a difference between the principles that you hold true to and then what you reveal to other people because you feel that you don't necessarily want to not so much impose or even share those things with other people sometimes because you think that you might be appearing too moralistic or something?
Yeah, that's yes. I mean, a lot of the time I don't really feel the need to share, and that happens a lot. And I would say some of it is being an INFJ as well, like considering other people's feelings and being aware of how they're going to, or anticipating how they're going to react, things like that.
Also, is it so? For instance, I mean, you're probably in a place that's less religious than, say, many places in the United States, and so talking about your faith is probably going to be harder than say.
Well, I'm an introverted. I'm a very introverted person. I'll get onto that because certain types of type 1 that can be very introverted. So I don't really talk to much people. When it's more, if I'm online or maybe if I was in university, whatever, then it would be more of an issue because there would be more people talking about stuff. And for me, it's always into the adaptation and all about seeing other people's point of view, trying to understand it and compare and contrast, see what it fits in and stuff. So I've always been drawn to anything with different viewpoints. Like when I was doing history, one of the things that I quite liked was historiography, which is the study of different historical viewpoints. There's like Marxist viewpoint, Marxist history, feminist history, conservative history, all these things that they can be looking at the same subject, the same time period, but they have different interpretations of it. And then you can get into philosophy and different schools of thought and sociology and all those different schools of thought, and eventually I got into typology at exactly the right time because I was getting quite annoyed with how everything was coming down to ideological viewpoints or class viewpoints or race viewpoints and not individual viewpoints, which is quite useful and helpful. So yeah, I do feel that because I think I made the conscious decision, in fact, that I say that because if my convictions are strong and my beliefs are strong enough, if I have enough faith in my convictions, I should be willing to see different viewpoints, to accept that these things can be true, or suspend my own beliefs in order to understand them. Like, because seeing someone's point of view can always be a risk. There's a risk and a danger there if you're really, truly trying to see someone else's point of view, because you might find that it does make sense. Yours might not be true. Can be understood. Yours isn't necessarily needed. So there's that element there.
But when you do encounter somebody else's point of view and you research it and then you compare it to your own, it's like, well, I've played devil's advocate against this particular belief of mine, and I'm now more confident that I'm right.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I'll have to reevaluate my position depending on what it is. Sometimes I can tell that it's just the person does not have the right information or they've got biases and whatever, but you also have to acknowledge that you yourself have biases. And that's another thing I've studied. And like when I'm doing history, a lot of the books will have particular biases.
Oh yes.
And a lot of the other books will be trying to correct those biases. So it's kind of like a Hegelian process going on there, where
And it's
It's yeah,
first thing,
yeah, you first.
yeah, so first thing I would do is check out the background of the author.
Yes, that's usually what they teach you in school. In fact, that's what I was taught. But you can usually figure it out even as you're reading, if you don't know it.
Oh yeah.
With practice and training. But what you'll find is they'll go through there'll be a history of history where some books written in a certain decade or certain authors will have a certain viewpoint. Later books will challenge that viewpoint or offer a different viewpoint. Later on, there'll try and be a synthesis and so on. And a lot of the books are written as a response to certain situations. For example, I'm reading a biography of Hitler right now,
Right.
and it is emphasising more on how he's a power-hungry madman and so on. The book was written in German and was quite recent, and recently in Germany there has been a rise in the far right, and there's also been the copyright in Mein Kampf has expired, so it will be freely available. So that's the other thing, the edition of Mein Kampf that's out now that has written by historians. Every single page has notes by historians saying why this is wrong or why this is biased or why he's making stuff up.
If anyone who reads it who's intelligent, it is so ignorant. It is amazingly ignorant.
And so they just made stuff up.
Biology, it's amazing.
Well, he was taking. It wasn't his ideas. He was reading other stuff that was just his idea, but sounding more scientific at times. So it's sourced. It's
almost Trumpian.
See it. As far as Trump goes, a lot of people compared to Hitler, but I think he almost has exactly the same personality type as Goring. Like even the same. Even the same tri-type and function.
What I mean by the Trumpian thing is not the believing in similar things, but in the way he would make arguments that are you can make ridiculous arguments that are almost funny. Where, but in fact, it's like 10 times worse. It's just really bad. It's the stuff on genetics, and it's just so ignorant. It's like unbelievable that people could take it seriously. But
well, remember it was the 20s when he wrote it, so obviously not just him, but everyone else was quite ignorant back then. So
and I remind people about the German Empire in South Africa. I think it was Namibia, would later be called Namibia. German Southwest Africa. It then joined with South Africa. And Neil Ferguson I actually learned about this from so here's an example though of somebody who's more a right of centre historian. And I like Neil Ferguson, even though he once wrote in his book The History of Money he said some bad things about the gold standard. I almost threw the book away because that's the one in my tri-type. I'm big on the gold standard. That thing though, because there is folks, for Americans watching this, it is in Britain. If you're a white Christian, certain times you might hide your faith because you don't want people looking at you funny. Like, really? Like, so were you like that? Did you try to play it down like when you were at university because you wouldn't want silly questions from people?
Oh yeah, but at the same time, I am quite a private person to begin with, so I'm not sure. I would say there was definitely a bit of that going on when people were talking about it, whatever, but at the same time, I kept to myself so much that I was quite private. So I went to a Catholic school, so it's not like, and the standards were quite relaxed there, so it's not.
Yeah, you just see the same thing that I've seen.
Yes. Yes.
By Millie.
Yeah.
Right. Now I shouldn't really do this, but I was going to send her the diagram of the ENFJ. profile that we've been going through. I mean, it's not officially been released, but you know, bits of it have been seen in the ENFJ hangout. So, because I've not had. Right then.
Wait.
Right. Okay. So to me, that's like I said. People talk about quadrant values. Gotta be careful. Gotta be not over ambitious with like you're in this quadrant. It determines all these things about you, and it's like for instance, it's like World Socionic Society typed crystal as Delta. But, you know, her values are coming from her religion. She's done videos, she's talked about her religion. So, nearly anyone who is religious will come across as Delta values.
Yeah, I will say there is a correlation between Enneagram 1 and religious. Type 9 and Type 1 apparently are the most likely to be religious. Anything can be religious, though. I've seen different people of all different types being religious. Just apparently, there are even Type 5s and Type 8s, they can be. But there is a bit of a correlation, and that's. I did wonder about that if you know, I'm typing as a 1 because I'm religious and all that, but I don't think so, because when I look back, as I remember my childhood, I do remember it quite well enough that I've always had stronger sense of values and always felt a bit like I took things more, like I took religious and ethical matters a bit more seriously, at least inside my mind, not necessarily on the surface. It's not necessarily true, but I may have at least felt that I was taking it more seriously than people around me.
And in those cluster of traits you described for Enneagram 1, there's going to be certain things not determined by your faith, like the perfectionist and other traits of the 1.
Yeah, well, it's tricky also though, because Christianity is can be quite Type 1 or at least Type 9 wing 1 or something. It would be in that general area. Especially certain interpretations of Christianity would definitely be more Type 1 as well. But they go quite well together. That's I think I've said before that sometimes I've heard that you're not necessarily born with your type, but you're born into your triad. So that could have been an 8, a 9, or a 1, according to that theory.
I'll just show people the triads. I think is that the centers, the triads?
Yes.
Right, I'll show people that. So what I think we're noticing with Jonathan so far, folks, is that you've got this like inner interplay between strong convictions of the E1 and then the FE in the INFJ.
Yeah, I think a lot of the descriptions make it sound quite serious. It's almost like they'll describe the Type 1 as quite serious and, you know, pedantic and all that, but they'll also add on later on, or they'll mention later on that actually they can be quite funny, they can enjoy themselves, they can be quite relaxed. It's not, especially if they're healthy, it's more of a unhealthy thing. And again, it is biased in particular towards ISTJs, and I'd also say it's biased a bit more towards the 1 wing 2s and maybe some other ones.
And what I can say is about ISTJs is ISTJs can have a silly side to them.
Yes.
But it's not going to be... And even in the Barron's profile, I think it wrote that the ISTJ, as long as the work's being done, they can even joke as they're doing the work. Where it's going to be something that's a little thing. And it will depend on the environment. And it's not going to be a regular thing. It will be a surprising thing. Of like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that to come out of them. But so every now and then they can be a little bit what we would call any humour. Right, maybe once a week. They might say something.
Yeah, and obviously not. I'm saying the description is quite stereotypical ISTJ. It's not that all ISTJs are type 1s or anything. I mean, I think my dad's an ISTJ, and I would actually say he's a type 9.
And what people really need to realise as well is SJ does not mean conservative, it means conventional within their subculture. So a Glaswegian ISTJ.
No, he's not from Glasgow, okay.
But you know what I mean? I'm talking about like, he's going to be quite different from a Mormon ISTJ. Or, or an Eton ISTJ.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions at the moment?
Right. It's mainly about. Do you want to talk more about what your values actually are?
I'd say there's not like
too private.
I'll talk a bit about them. I'd say if they're not that unconventional, they're be kind, be charitable, be forgiving. I'd say they are traditional. They're based on traditional Christian values. Sometimes I have to hit up against something like when it comes to something like homosexuality. But that's not. I've got no problem with homosexuality or gay rights. It's not. In the church, there's this thing where you've got the Bible, but you've also got tradition and all that, and homosexual, gay rights and stuff. Is more of a tradition thing. It's not. There are a couple of passages in the Bible that seem to whatever, but there's almost nothing. There's a lot more about divorce and masturbation and so on.
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, people need to get perspective. Adultery is in the 10 Commandments. I don't even think Jesus once mentioned homosexuality, and I think in total there's only like 6 clauses in the Bible about homosexuality.
Some of them might not even be about homosexuality. There's been arguments that they're they like they do, but
interestingly enough, there's one in Romans where it shows like this sort of like immorality getting worse and worse and worse and worse. But homosexuality is like at the beginning. So it's like even in the rank of like bad things, it's like really low down. And it's like I think they call them I think the gay rights people call them, who are also Christian, they call them the clobber passages. It's like the bits they have to deal with. It's like 6 because I researched this for a character who was like lesbian and Christian, and I think there's like 6 passages. And there is actually a website that's called, I don't know which way around it is. It's either ChristianLesbians.com or LesbianChristians.com.
All right.
And they discuss those passages in the Bible.
Yeah.
Those.
I mean, one thing I've been drawn to, and this helped me decide whether I was a 5 or a 1. Like I was leaning towards 1 after I read the descriptions, but I mean after I bought books and read the descriptions. But although I would consider myself quite intellectual-ish or drawn to intellectual stuff, a lot of the time it is drawn to ethical matters. Like if I'm mentioning philosophy, but my main thing was always ethics and maybe political philosophy and religious philosophy and stuff. So I do tend to spend a huge amount of time in private just thinking over, either reading about or thinking over ethical philosophies, things like the categorical versus the consequentialist and virtue ethics, and how all these things combine and play into. I would say virtue is quite important on the building up of a good character, because it's not just about having and I say that's quite important to me because it's not just about having a set of rules that you can apply to any situation. It's also about a lot of things that won't be possible, or as it said in the description, I'll be thinking long term. So what's good in the short term might be bad in the long term. And I would say that if you develop a good character, if you find out what a good character is, and if you develop that, you're better able at making judgments and seeing things more clearly. And another type 1 value I really relate to is objectivity, or the desire to be, just if you see it as something to strive for, that it's not something you necessarily have because everyone is biased in some ways, in some form. But if you acknowledge that you are biased, but you can try to be objective and try to be balanced and see different sides. I definitely think I think a lot of people do value objectivity, but I think I do take it a bit in private in my head. I do take it a bit further than most. Like I won't, even when I agree with someone, I might be privately going, not sure if I agree with the way you're seeing it or the way you understand it or anything. But I can see your point of view so clearly, and you're just not explaining it right. And
well, you almost feel like, well, if you're going to have this point of view, say this, because I've already read it. You might want to give them tips on how to put across that view. But if you're going to have that belief, say this.
Which would annoy people a lot.
Yeah.
Because they don't, for some reason, people don't like to be corrected.
Oh, yeah.
I did actually.
It's like, this is how you can disagree with me better if you say this, and
exactly, yes! I've been like that, yeah. I've been in that situation where it's just, I understand what you're saying, but you could, and
so you're a perfectionist, not just for yourself, but for other people.
Oh yeah, and that's also because social variant, social instinct, one, and the thing with that, other types and other people might not agree with that because that's a question of the perfect versus the good. There's a question of how important is it for me to nitpick certain things, or is it perhaps sometimes it can seem better to be biased if you're pushing a particular important viewpoint. Like, if you're talking about something like slavery or racism, for instance, I mean, yes, I could give you could argue that you should give balanced viewpoints and try and show what people mean and understand and all that. But at the same time, if you're talking about a very sensitive subject there, and it could be that it could seem like if you're being fair and balanced, you're justifying a really horrible viewpoint because you're making it seem more legitimate than other people would see it as, or than it is. Even if your end goal is to defeat it, which is not a problem as well, because on the other side, people might resent that you're only being fair and balanced because it's ultimately you're planning to defeat their argument or just whatever, or their way or their understanding of things.
Say, I want to defeat their best arguments.
Yes, there's a concept in philosophy I've come across quite recently. I've practiced it for a long time, but I've only recently learned the terms. One concept is called steel manning, which is the opposite of a straw man. A straw man's a straw man can be a valid interpretation of an argument.
I hate that. I just see that as sophistry.
But it is a weak. Well, a lot of straw man is not done on purpose. A lot of time it isn't. They do believe it's what they're saying.
Oh yeah.
But a steel man argument is the strongest possible version you could see of another person's argument. And there's also something called the principle of charity, which is basically means you generally assume that the other person has a point, that they have honourable intentions or whatever. The other problem with that is sometimes they don't have a point, or sometimes they don't have honourable intentions. But that's another. Even thing is, though, sometimes even then you could argue that you should treat it as if they do, because then you're basically even when they're trying to cheat, you're defeating them.
Yeah, I mean,
So much.
I get to the point where I don't want to spend all this time convincing this other person if it's like talking about politics. And it's just like, oh God, I've not got the time for this.
Yeah, but at the same time, that particular mindset is, what I say about you, sometimes it can seem like you think you're right and they're wrong. It's because you're assuming they're biased, or it could be that
it's like I've done that, like with the economics. It's like with Austrian Scott. It's like it is what it is. It's right. It doesn't take too long to explain it. Like I can give like the TI point of view and the TE point of view. It's like, you know, the one thing you said that was, and it's really hard to explain. And like when I first listened to Peter Schiff, I had to do a lot of rewinding. But you said something fantastically interesting when you talked about philosophy. I wondered, how do you feel when you were looking at Nietzsche?
Nietzsche triggered a depression in me, an actual clinical depression. I think I never really told anyone, but it was like I wasn't even reading Nietzsche. I was in a bookshop. I read the back cover of one of his books, and that was like,
Yeah.
Like, I think actually what I was thinking he was saying was different from what he was actually saying in that back cover. Maybe even more sophisticated. Not to put me on horn, but so it was like, I mean, that was when I was just out of high school. But a year after I was in high school, I was in the city, in a bookshop, and it was, you know, like I said, I'm a Christian, reading this stuff and reading that point of view that, I mean, I'd encountered...
Especially attacking the ethics of Christianity, that must have...
Yeah, but like...
Struck hard.
No, at that point, I hadn't even read it properly. Like I said, it was just the back... It literally was the back cover. I can't remember what it says, but it was... I think I thought he meant that you don't need... I thought he meant even if God exists, then objective morality may not be true, which is not actually what he was saying. That's what I thought he said, and that was like a thunderstruck horror thing moment for me. Because I'd encountered atheism before, and there were people in school who weren't very religious and all that, but it was after that I had to start thinking seriously about it and critically, and realising that even if atheism isn't right, agnosticism might be, or whatever. And that's when you're looking really critically at your own beliefs and your own things, and accepting that they are just, or they might just be personal opinions rather than truths when you really thought they were. That can be quite stressful, but I did take, as I said, I did feel that if they're true, whether they're true or not, it's better to pursue it, because if they are true, then they will stand up. And I do feel like they have. It's been a really rough battle at times, but I feel like they have stood up more or less, or at least the possibility they stood up.
Do you think that the doubt is an E1 thing or an INFJ thing, or a combination of the two?
Probably more of an INFJ thing, because it's not, or it could also be I have a 5-fix. It might be that as well. The curiosity, the intellectual thing is more of a consequence of being naturally inclined to see different points of view.
Does the fix mean that it's in your tri-type?
Yes.
Right. That'll be even more interesting when we eventually do the Nietzsche, when we go through the Nietzsche book. Thus spake Zarathustra.
I think I can stand up to Nietzsche now. Like at first it was horror. It was a horror. It's almost like I can understand. It's almost like now I can understand exactly what he means. Like I feel like some of my journey might have been some of his, because obviously he started off as a Christian when he was younger. I think there are very many differences, and certainly differences in conclusions.
Yeah,
but
I think he might have had an abusive childhood where he would just like, to him it was like torture. And when we go through it, we will go through and we'll go like when he's being, because you've defended it when I've said all that's a sophistic argument, being poetic license and
well, that's another thing, you know. I'm a Christian defending Nietzsche. That's something E1-ish.
But I just think that I think it was Antoine de Botton said he had like a strict Lutheran upbringing, and like the English translation of his gravestone was something like Friedrich Nietzsche, a known antichrist, something like that.
Yeah, well, I think a German antichrist means anti-Christian, or something more like that.
At least they buried him. I mean, did they bury him in the churchyard?
Yeah, I wonder if his dad was a type 1 then. If they're really stripped up, bringing like a ISTJ 1, could have been, because all the descriptions of Enneagram 1 will focus on the puritanical side of things and all that.
I mean, being a Catholic, you might know of certain Catholics who turned against it because the child was like too much forced on them.
Yeah, well, mine never felt like that. Mine was quite. I mean, my mother's Catholic, but my dad isn't. Dad isn't religious. So, and there's a lot of people in my mother's side of the family who aren't, or who are Catholic, but don't go to church, that sort of thing. So it's not. It's relatively liberal Catholic, I would say. It's not, and it's more. And I've always been drawn more to the spirit of the words than the letters.
Right.
The letter things, the real meaning behind things, which is how the E1 goes with INFJs.
So now we know about principles and drives. Now we can sort of like go through this top road of reformer.
Okay. One last word though.
Yep.
I will say that Rachel Hudson and some others, they would equate Enneagram 1 with extroverted thinking, as they said.
So your sound went a little bit. Did you say introverted thinking for Enneagram 1?
Extroverted thinking. Sorry, extroverted thinking.
Oh right, yeah.
That's what I meant to say. They
that's
say
fair
that.
Enough.
They say that, and they quote Jung. I think that's. I mean, again, that's the 90s, and I know that they were trying to see how scientific. They were trying to really reinforce the Enneagram and appeal to other sources like Jung for it. So they equate it with extroverted thinking. I would equate it more with introverted perceiving and extroverted judgment in combination. I would say, as I think we said at the start of this, that it's almost always a J type. Like you could get into cases where a P type would type as a 1 or be typed as a 1, but in general, it's almost always a judging type in the Myers-Briggs sense. And if you think of it in terms of introverted perceiving, like SI and NI, and extroverted judgment, that's a good way of understanding it, because it's sort of like you have this image of perfection, this image of how things should be in your head, and you try and put it onto the world or align the world with it.
And TE valuing is also FI valuing. So you've got that tandem FITE.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a value, here's implementing it.
Yeah. Quite more philosophy, I would say, is quite Plato is usually typed as a 1 as well. And I can relate to that, the Platonic idea is the idea of there is a perfect way of how things there's a perfect table somewhere, and all tables are just an imitation of the table, and that sort of thing.
So now we can sort of go through this to sort of like see how accurate this table is, because a lot of people would come across this.
I would say
table.
it's very simplistic, but I don't understand it. Yeah, so the resentment is more the resentment of other people not doing the right thing, or you feel like you're the only one doing this. You're the only one who cares, or whatever, or you're the one to take it seriously, and other people are not doing it right, or whatever. Now, whether you're actually doing anything at all, that is a different matter. Because a lot of the time I'll find myself, judging people even though I'm not actually doing anything. Sometimes I'm not doing anything because I think it's better not to do anything because I'm seeing how things might play out, or I'm worried about not making the right choice. But at the same time, it could be that other people are doing, maybe not for the right reasons, but they're doing a right thing, like they're taking a stand, and it does work out. And I was worried it wouldn't. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think that Enneagram 1s can feel alienated against and resentful towards a society that they see as less moral than they are, less ethical?
Yes.
Than they are.
Definitely. I don't know
examples.
Sorry? No.
Examples? Oh, you don't want to give examples of... Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I would say they're not... I would say that if you have a NiFx as well, like, I think Hannah would probably agree with you there, because I think he's almost said it in other hangouts. She's a 6, but she's a NiFx. She might agree with what you just said there. So I'd say other types might feel that.
About society?
Yeah.
About society?
Yeah.
Yeah. Folks should see the third hangout going through the Kersey healer idealist profile, where she talks about she wishes that appearance was irrelevant.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say there's a qualitative differences between someone who's actually a 1 versus someone who's got a different type, and obviously function differences and cultural differences in experience, but they'll be there.
Right. So, how does 1 compare with FI?
That's I would say it's distinct from it. It's like it's more like if buys emotions in the heart. This is not emotions. It's more like in your bones, like a strong sense of conviction. It's not what I normally think of as FI. FI is much more personal, or more. I can back up. Difficult to describe. It's like there's a subtle distinction between the stuff of the heart and the stuff of this, which is more like it doesn't matter whether it's how I feel about it. Necessarily, I'm trying to bring my feelings in line with what I think is right, not necessarily what I think is right stems from my feelings, or I'll have stuff that my feelings think are right, but my convictions feel are wrong. Does that make any sense? or I'll make there's just stuff that I'll think, yeah, these are my principles, but these are my likes and dislikes. That's also I have read descriptions of FI that it says more in terms of like and dislike rather than right or wrong, which can be debated, but
What, I mean, INFPs are usually
I think
pegged
there is.
as the most ethical.
I don't agree with that to begin with. So this, I mean, I can.
In terms of their own, sticking to their own.
Yeah, but
ethics.
I wouldn't say that as ethics, though. I'd say ethics are.
Okay, principled. Principled.
Yeah, even then, it was with. I mean, this could be just an INFJ thing rather than not one thing, but with FI types, it's very much a sense of this. I care because it relates to me somehow, or like I can imagine how I would feel in that position, or I've been there, or I know someone who's been there, and all that, and that kind of thing. Actually, I've always found a little off-putting and wrong.
Right.
Long before I got into typology or anything, it was always there. It was like it goes back to you want to do the right thing in the right way for the right reasons.
Yeah. Do you almost feel that Enneagram 1 is like, okay, you've got that FI, but this is a combination of feeling and thinking.
I would say so.
The Enneagram 1. This is unified.
No, I would say so. It could be that. It could also be something else. Like I know in the Enneagram,
right.
2, 3, and 4 are the heart types, and 5, 6, and 7 are the head types.
Yeah.
8, 9, and 1 are the body types. And it does kind of weigh a bit more to that sense of it being in your bones, of an instinctive sense. It's like, yeah, I've always had this like issue with people who are doing the right thing because they feel like it or they want to do it, or because it relates to them, and especially if they're really trying to convince someone to, and even making them feel bad about not contributing to what they believe in when the reason they believe in it is because it relates to them. So that's probably not how that's not necessarily how FI types experience it though. So yeah, and again, I'm trying not. I have tried long before I got into typology or anything. I have tried to not be judgmental because I found it. I think when I was younger, I found it a bit shocking that people didn't like it when.
I just want to clarify something on judgmental. Do you mean judgmental in terms of what you tell other people, but are you fine with being judgmental internally?
Well, that's what I was saying. No, because I think when I was younger, I felt like when I was younger, I felt like I was shocked to find out that people don't like moralistic people, or they don't like guilt. But I thought guilt was probably normal. I mean, some of that's again, some of that just be being a Catholic. Guilt is just a natural part of that. But also, a lot of people just seem to really resent the idea of guilt, or they're aware of, or they interpret it as something. When they hear guilt, they think it's the thing that will be used against you. You'll be made to feel guilty for something being true to yourself.
Or they think you're Catholic and you experience guilt.
Yeah.
Catholic guilt.
Yeah. But
you're taught to be guilty.
It wasn't that much there. I wouldn't think. I think that some of that is just me being an E1. I mean, before I probably would have thought it was me being a better person, actually. but yeah, well, as far as learning, eventually I did accept that being moralistic is not actually, it is a wrong thing. It can be wrong in itself, and it can just be arrogant. So it's not just a case of I don't want to look judgmental, it's that I don't want to be too judgmental. But not necessarily I don't want to be judgmental at all. I think it's more like I want to refine my judgment as best as possible.
with me, it's I don't want to spoil the atmosphere.
That too. That's part.
Spoil it.
That too. That's part
Connection.
of it. But that's where a lot of tension comes from, because it's like you have to find the balance between not wanting to spoil things, but also not wanting things to get out of hand or go the wrong way because you didn't say anything or because you didn't stop it.
If people want to see an example of this, is because I think I'm like a 4-1-5. If people see some of the hangouts with Hannah, is where we politely disagree on some political things.
Yeah, I mean, I do.
And I mean that in an honest, generally way, because we don't want to spoil the atmosphere. And we don't want to create a.
Yeah, I mean, with me it can be worse because I can feel like I can feel how the other person feels when I do that.
Plus, she also puts her points well.
Yes, that's true. That's another thing. Again, right thing, right way, right reasons. I want people to express their points, not just well, but also in terms of accounting for the other person's point of view, accounting for how they are going to interpret it.
I was put in a little bit of a tricky situation where, when we did the hangout on the ethics of like INFP, and she doesn't want people judged by their appearance. Well, I always put myself in the position of defending the ESTP builder the wolf whistles and sort of like explaining why they were doing it. So I was like put in an odd position.
Yeah.
They're like explaining their thought process because their thought process will work with the NFJs because of the romance style.
Yeah.
So, so that's where this is why typology is such a help.
Yes.
Where you don't have things like women think this as if all women are the same.
But there's that. I also find typology, on the one hand, it's really helpful, and on the other hand, it's kind of despairing because it's almost like I could usually intuit whether someone would, listen to me or not, or understand what I'm trying to say or not before. But now I understand why they wouldn't understand, why they, well, that, and that can be a bit. It's good, but it's also a bit bad at times because it's like before I could think I could change their mind eventually by just setting an example or eventually society would improve to the point where that stuff would be pulled out, and now it may or may not. I have to consider where do my convictions come from? Is this just a type thing or not, or is there? Now I have to consider is their way right or wrong, or
well, if it's an argument, you can you can give them the TE version.
That's hard.
Or if you don't want to give them the TI version.
That's hard though, and also, well, it's hard for me as an INFJ. Obviously, it's my weak point, but also.
Oh yeah, you're arguing different things from me. Because I'm usually arguing economic things, and even there, I don't like. There's no point because I know I'm going to be proven right by the US dollar collapsing very soon, and then I'm going to rub it in. I'm going to be saying, we Austrians have been telling you for years. Listen up, people. Now you'll understand because before
they won't.
Oh, what a load of nonsense! You've been talking about this for decades, Austrians. You've always been banging on about the gold standard, you weirdo Ron Paulites.
I usually find that people, when I think that will happen, they usually don't, because they'll have a different viewpoint anyway, and they'll be anticipating. They'll have different explanations for why this thing happens or not. So even when you think That's what I was talking about, the despair of typology. There's like even despair of different viewpoints. They have when you really understand someone's different viewpoint and you really accept it as at least somewhat legitimate, you can see that they've actually got a whole well of information to draw back on. They've got a whole range of explanations for this thing.
Yes, but when it's economics, it's like arguing this is a logical thing, this is a science. And then we will talk about this. We'll talk about it maybe by the end of the year. But the reason why I've become more confident about this is that the empirical stuff is now catching up with the TI stuff.
Yeah. Now, what do you mean by when you say TE way though? When you want to?
When I mean TE, I mean the empirical stuff, the facts and the figures.
Yeah. See, I always with that, it's more like I would. Sometimes I really want to argue that way. Sometimes I really like to, but my memory sucks. I don't have the books or whatever.
Okay. We'll just do a brief. I'll just do a little brief digression. I'll do a brief digression for about 30 seconds to a minute on the TE version of economics and what's happening in America. Is you look at things like when you know what to look for, like hours worked, how much people get paid per hour, the way that the median income has been going down. You look at surface things where people go, oh, the unemployment rate is 5%. Dig below the surface. Look how you have a workforce that has been transitioning from full-time work to part-time work. All the other economic indicators that everyone ignores are flashing in great big neon signs saying recession, recession, recession. The one that is the outlier is the headline jobs figure. It's not like all the other indicators are wrong and the headline figure is right. If people dig below the surface, do the TE version of this, they'll say the reason why more people are being employed is that there's more people working part-time because of Obamacare, and that is why they haven't got enough money to buy stuff, because they're working part-time. And if you look at all of the data and knowing the TI version of Austrian school economics, where you know what the consequences will, you then know what to look for in the data. And so you look for production, you look for the trade deficit, you look for all of these things. And it's Peter Schiff has been talking about this for years, and it's only this year that it's started, that it's gone past the tipping point. And it is official. I mean, manufacturing is already officially in recession in the United States. And and what will happen, folks, is sometime before the election, probably, the Fed will announce, because she's the Democrat, that what they're going to do is to save the stock market, they will cut rates back to zero and then announce a new round of quantitative easing. Because you get this corporatism between Wall Street and the government, where they will cut interest rates to support Wall Street. And the reason why people invest is because you're not getting enough interest rate in the bank, and it forces from the bank, so it forces people into the stock market. And so what you then get is you get a bloated stock market, and the rest of the economy goes down, and you get an increase in the disparity between the wealth gap, I've forgotten what it's called, the gap between rich and poor increases because of the corporatism. And that gives capitalism a bad name. So all of these things are a consequence of the monetary policy. Monetary policy is so important. It's enormously important, because the lower interest rates are, the more money goes into consumption, like consumer credit, which is a bad thing, away from investment, which leads to more production and hiring more people, which will eventually lead to lower prices because of the increase in productivity. And it also goes into housing. You get these booms. So all of this stuff, it's like there's the TI and the TE of it, where it's all happened before. You look at when there's been a recession, and you go, why did it happen? And then you look and you go, look, this was the monetary policy that caused it in all the cases. I can give like proper examples. World War One, they went off the gold standard to pay for World War One in the United States. All this inflation was created, and it led to an enormous recession in 1920. The stock market crash that was bigger than the one in 1929, but it was solved by the president knew, do nothing. The recession is the cure, and then the whole thing was over in 18 months. Now, we hear bullshit from saying, Hoover did nothing. He was do nothing Hoover. No, it's Hoover did all this bullshit Keynesian crap before Roosevelt came in. And then Roosevelt just did more of the same stuff. And that because the recession is the cure. If you have a crazy screwed up economy because of the boom, the recession is the cure. It's really hard, but you got to have that. And they actually did that in Eastern Europe because they studied, apparently I also once saw a program where they studied these Austrian economists in the woods. And they knew they had to go through something called shock therapy in order to transition from the communist system to a capitalist system. And I think Gorbachev once said, how would people know what to do in like a capitalist system? He said, but what happened is all the people who worked in the black market came out and they suddenly went into the market. So the shock therapy of going from communism to capitalism. And now you've got a situation where long term, those economies in Eastern Europe are better off than those in Western Europe. And most of those countries in Eastern Europe have a flat tax. The highest tax rate in Russia is 12%. It's got 12% flat tax. Flat tax in Ukraine is 13%. And long term, that's going to be good for their economy. End of lecture. So there's the TI and the TE version of all this.
Okay, I understood almost none of that, but
that's the problem. That is the problem.
Well, I think I vaguely understand what you're. I think I vaguely the gist of it.
People only understand it once it's happened.
Oh, it's sort of understood.
You don't like once it's happened. Like I said that about unemployment because the part of the problem is we've been talking about this, we Austrians, for decades. And it's like, oh yeah, you told us the same thing. And it's like, but so many countries where it's happened, like look at Greece, and it's just that because the United States is like the big enchilada, they're just given more rope. And and everyone knows, like on a small scale, you can't keep running up debt forever and ever. The history is lit. You've studied history. So many countries that have run up so much debt, then the chickens come home to roost.
Okay, I will say that someone who is more versed in economics than me would probably have arguments against you. You might find even that they do actually agree with you. The rest of responses are different priorities because a lot of it is about the human cost of recession and all that.
Yeah, that I can grant them, but that's where we want the long term problems in the short term.
Short term, we're talking. I mean, this is.
I mean, what you can do is what I would do personally is I would be tough on the monetary policy, and you can still help people out who are going through the recession. Anyway, we don't want to digress too much.
I'll bring it back on track though, because
yes, back on track.
Well, fine. With regards to what you were saying, what I find is that even when people, this is the E1 thing. This is the search for objectivity here, because if I did know more about economics and I was looking at your viewpoint, I'd be looking at other people's viewpoints. I'd probably look at the arguments you had with them, and I'd probably see all the ways you look like you disagree, but you really do agree, or a case of you agree or don't agree, but you have different priorities.
That's one thing, but with Keynesianism, it's built on a fundamental logical flaw. It's like the failed and economic IQ test. Well, and I won't go into that yet because that's like a super duper TI argument, and where you go into the logic of it. And I'll talk about that in future once the dollar has collapsed. and it's like hit people between the eyes, right? Then it's like reality's proved us right. This is why it's happened. And it's like the recession started in 2007, and it wasn't until we were already in the recession and people didn't know it. Because, but like I said, people view us like as the mad Ron Paulites.
Anyway,
but anyway, we'll get back on track. We'll get back to the diagram. But this is the so. Do you think? Do you reckon I could be 415?
I don't know.
Do you think maybe there's a 1 in there?
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah,
I know you probably think I'm a 5. Right.
Oh, I was. My mind's. I was thinking something else there. What?
Probably not an 8. You can probably cut that one out.
Actually, I was going to ask. Do you think the recession will? Or do you think this thing will happen this year or before the election?
Oh.
Because if the one thing history does teach you is that when economic,
it's the timing
really
is difficult, but it's gonna.
When really bad economics happen, that's when someone like Trump would benefit the most.
Yes, and that's what Peter Schiff has talked about. But you see, Jeff and I don't think if Trump doesn't get 1237 delegates, he is not going to be the nominee because he is not. He is nobody's second choice, and also Ted Cruz. Jeff and I think he is an ENTJ, and his ground game with the delegates, because not only do you get allocated delegates, right? How many delegates you can have, but the way you choose your delegates, and you can get delegates who are very loyal to. And his ground game is amazing in terms of organization. And Jeff and I think he's an ENTJ. So, for instance, in Louisiana, he got a lower vote than Trump, but he ended up with more delegates because just of how organized he is. Because this whole weird thing of like how delegates are elected and all of these kind of things, all of these nuances that I'm only just starting to understand. That so basically, folks, what's going to happen if Trump doesn't get 1230? If it's like 100 short, then the other candidates they don't like Ted Cruz. They do not like, but they realize that Donald Trump would be a disaster in the general election. So, and Marco Rubio really hates Donald Trump, and so they will put their delegates over with Cruz. Because Rubio has like 100 delegates. I mean, if
I've heard people wonder though if they'll put another candidate entirely, like Ron Paul or
no, because that would be too much of a
yeah.
What have I got here?
Anyway, back on topic.
Right, yeah. Back on topic. We've both gone into our wands where we talk about principles, but yeah, but you see. That's too much out of it, and you see those two voting blocks, Trump's delegates and Ted Cruz's delegates, they wouldn't allow someone to come in like Paul Ryan. Basically, the nominee is going to be one of those two. Now, here's something else, folks, that is a maybe. Hillary Clinton might be indicted.
She won't be. I think people are saying she will, but the FBI have actually said they're not going to indict her. It's not a criminal investigation.
Well,
so it's not.
Someone's been given immunity from prosecution, and usually there's a saying, "No dirt, no deal."
Well, she is a 1. I'm going to defend her, but nonetheless.
Hillary Clinton's a 1.
Yeah, I've heard that she's been tied as a 1. SOSP 1 wing 2 Roy.
Well, I mean, her principles must be number 1. Look after the number 1.
She could be an SX 1, but it's.
Anyhow, we were seriously digressing. Right.
Yeah. I think if we do an Enneagram 8 hangout, we could talk about Trump and maybe Cruz. Cruz might be an 8, not sure. An ENTJ. But that's another thing.
Oh.
That would be an interesting topic.
Jeff and I talk about how Cruz is like hitting them bullet points, the repetition of the bullet points, jobs, security, freedom, and like he talks about Ted Cruz like loading the disc, he talks about him And I suggested that, like, Ted Cruz, he does like speeches without a teleprompter, and he like goes to certain positions on the stage to deliver certain. And I said, well, maybe that's like a memory technique, like a loci type thing. Oh, I'll say this over here, that over there. And I was saying that Jeff doesn't like loading the disc, in terms of, like, if you said to Jeff, hey, tell us about artisans, he doesn't know where to start. Whereas Ted Cruz would go, adaptability, artistry, audacity. Like, hit those bullet points.
Right.
In that, he's got so many mannerisms, Ted Cruz. It's quite funny. Seriously digressing. Now we're going to get back to this table, but these are good examples of my one fix and your one fix. And but yeah, I mean, we'll do hangouts on the one. But yes, the economy will get worse before the recession. Peter Schiff thinks the Fed will come to the rescue before the election. In what will happen is they will cover up the recession by making the stock market go up, but at the expense of the dollar, because that will happen in future. So they will sacrifice the dollar to save the market, because the market has a lot of political influence with donations and things. And also the political class have a lot of money invested in the stock market. Right, so... Right.
This has been your economic forecast with Ben David.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, back on topic.
But like I said, the reason I'm confident about this is it's already in recession. Right.
For the fourth and final time, we're back on topic. We'll stay here.
Right. Right. We'll go across this table, and then we'll look at that super duper diagram with all the little bits on.
Okay.
Right. Right then. So, how much time do you have, Jonathan?
I've got all night.
Right. Okay. You have or you haven't?
I have. I'm here all night, folks.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Right.
I mean, I'll probably put a stop to it at some point, but...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I might have a hangout with Jeff. I'm doing a Blake 7 review, maybe at about midnight. Right. Right, okay. So we've done this ego fixation and resentment, and maybe resenting the whole of society if they are like a bunch of immoral so-and-sos from your point of view. And if someone feels alienated...
Yeah, but also just people, feel like they don't care as much, but they're enjoying it more, or also like they think they care and they're doing their own thing, which you think is wrong. But
I can ask you something about that. How much does it help, like being in an organ? I mean, like because you're one and your one is associated with your faith. How much does it help being around other people of the same faith, with like maybe similar views?
Well, that's the thing. Even if you have the same views, this is where the problem is. A lot of the time, I do have the same views as people, but they believe in they've got a different interpretation, a slightly different point of view, or they've got different strategies or different understandings and all that. And that's where that's the real core of this. That's the real nuance here.
Oh God, that's such a perfectionist that people that you probably agree 95% with.
Yeah. That's exactly what the point. I mean, see, from my point of view, it's more like if you keep choosing the good over the perfect, you're always choosing second best.
Right.
Same as you're getting second best results. Right. A lot of the time, the problems of the future are because you had imperfect solutions.
Right. Okay.
Present.
So, do you hate the phrase when someone says, "Don't make the perfect the enemy of the good"?
Well, firstly, I do not hate periods. I do not hate things. Secondly, it's food for thought because it's somewhat true. It's more like sometimes the perfect and the good are friends. Sometimes they're enemies. Because again, it can be that I get so perfectionistic that the perfect and the good both go down the toilet because I want things to be done a certain way and it doesn't happen. A lot of the time I feel, most of the time, and this might be me being a a wing 9 rather than a wing 2. However, a lot of the time, or also just an INFJ, a lot of the time it feels like I'm being really judgmental privately, but I'm not actually doing anything. Or like I've got such perfectionistic standards that I procrastinate and do nothing. So
Right.
it's almost like I'm judging myself for being judgmental. And
Yeah.
in fact, it's not like that. It is that. That's exactly what's happening.
Right. 10-second digression, folks. They reckon a lot of libertarians, it's the TP, is a TI thing.
Yes.
Because it's like, it's very different from the way society is at the moment. And that is why people look at us and go, what a load of libertarian fantasy.
So with TI types, especially with INTPs more so, it was with them it's more like they value their own thinking so much that they're suspicious of the education system or the government or whatever, the things that advise you how to think.
Oh yes, we absolutely disgusting when the people.
Yeah.
Terrible. Anyway, we won't go into that. So we've done the resentments. We pretty much covered the holy idea of perfection. Here's an interesting one: basic fear.
Corruption, imbalance, being bad. Got corruptness. Sorry. Yeah, I think I sort of touched on that, where you're worried that I'm judging myself for being judgmental. I'm worried that I'm not. I'm just being put too pedantic, or I'm worried that I'm. Who the hell am I to judge? I'm not doing anything, or not doing it right, or I'm making little exceptions for myself, or whatever, or that.
Yes.
I've got all these little
yes.
secrets.
The church and indulgences. The church and indulgences.
Not even just the church. Not even just the church. Other things as well.
Yeah. Certain popes who weren't exactly walking the walk.
Well, quite a lot of it. That doesn't bother me at all. And like I said, I'm more about the spirit of things and the letter. So I completely understand bad people pretending to be good or anything like that. This is more like you really do genuinely want to be good, but you're worried that you're bad anyway. That's the sort of thing. Or you'll be perceived as bad when you're trying your best. And not even that. Some of it is worried about the image or that people are mistaking you, but it's also you're worried that if you're seen as bad, then people won't listen to you and disaster will happen later on.
There's a little slight digression, but you're a historian, you might be interested in this. I remember seeing from Bethany Hughes where she was talking about the monasteries where they would have monks as sort of like, not so much monks, they would have like an unpaid workforce. I think it was working with wool. And so the monasteries became immensely rich because they had all these workers that they weren't paying. And they had maybe a situation where the people higher up in the monasteries actually lived the life that was contradictory to their teachings.
Yeah.
And so that may be an example of maybe like you can have like, I mean, they might even see themselves as like very devout but they'll like give themselves indulgences.
Yeah.
Like have people pray for them. Like the people, was it like people would pay someone to pray for them?
Yeah, something like that happened during the medieval times. That was that eventually led to Lutheranism and stuff. When I think of things like that, I am worried. I do get worried that not just in religious matters, but in anything I believe in or sympathise with, I am worried that people will see that as proof that it's not genuine or is not real, that they'll use it to misunderstand it, they'll take down, they'll throw out the baby with the bathwater. They'll take down the beliefs along with the behaviour. You know, people are the critics of it.
I mean, what people can see Pope is like the real deal. He's not a hypocrite.
Sorry, you broke up there.
But I was just saying that there's a lot of people that like the new Pope is the real deal, and people, and like I said, I always talk about non-socionics factors, non-typological factors, and especially someone's background, where he comes from in South America. He went through a certain situation with an economy, which explains why he has these like left-wing views as well. Again, the big impact of upbringing.
Yeah. Well, there's also the tension there because so much tension. Things like it's not just about looking good or even being genuinely good. Perfectionism. You want to be really good, but you also want to be really competent. And not totally. I do have to seriously consider ideas like, you know, you're going to look bad, you're going to need to be ruthless or whatever it does stand. So it's not necessarily about making people like you or whatever.
What is your biggest enemy? Is it yourself or is it society? For the Enneagram 1.
I would say myself. I would say that's true of everyone's yourself. Like society's a part of it, but at the end of the day, it always comes down to. I talked about virtue there. So it's about yourself, regardless of what society is saying or not saying. It ultimately comes down to the inner stuff, the inner struggles, the moral struggles, and all that. For anyone, not just for Enneagram 1, as I've genuinely felt.
So, what we'll probably cover this in a separate hangout in future, but what are the mental health issues that ones can go into in terms of maybe disorders?
I'll get that up. It's associated with well, there's depression, there's anxiety, but not necessarily the same type of anxiety because it's a 6, whatever. 6 is of general anxiety. This is more specific anxiety about being wrong or whatever. There's obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is distinct from obsessive. That's distinct from obsessive compulsive disorder, which is more of an anxiety issue. I think I've said it before. I was associated with the 6 and 9. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder is, again, though, it's more ISTJ when you look at it than INFJ.
Oh yeah,
but it's more about perfectionism and wanting things to be in control and
right.
just take it to the nth degree.
Is it more pervasive in the actual person that when it's got the personality part in the description, rather than just the outward behaviour, but it's more intrinsic to the person it's more to
the person. It's more general in their behaviour.
Yeah.
So, like OCD might be more specific down to you've got certain routine behaviours, or maybe you're a hoarder or whatever like that. And so much you could talk about there. Other things, I would also say that 119 is less.
Right. I asked Dario about something. This could be related. Is internally the ISTJ is unstable, and the OCD may be a way of compensating for that inner instability.
OCD usually is that's what OCD is. It's compensating for inner anxiety. You don't necessarily have to be an ISTJ. It could be various types of OCD, or perhaps even any type. Probably some more than others.
Have you seen Dr. G's Hangouts? Hangout number 4 on the receptive adaptive temperaments.
I may have, but I don't remember anything.
Ooh, it's one for you. And then there's number 9 as well, because it's about number 9 is about the SI, but it talks about dynamic function, with also like NI, and because it will go through the dichotomies. And S, the hangout number 4, that is one of those ones that's worth listening to 2 or 3 times. Because it is, folks, the SI and NI DOMs, and it talks about their internal turbulence. And Jonathan, we've got Maria in there giving good examples, who's a fellow type.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say with that, there are times that can feel very peaceful, and it's usually something that tends to realizing it. Sometimes, I think in general, I actually come across as quite calm and laid back. That's to do with being a 1-wing 9 more than a 1-wing 2. But I've got a list of. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you also see sometimes, because INFJs can be so dynamic and unstable on the inside, that maybe your E1 beliefs are like an anchor, a rock that you can cling to amongst that turbulence?
I suppose. I mean, in what ways are we turbulent?
I think it's dynamic emotions where things are changing. Maybe the thought process is, I think it's like Vortex synergetic, where it's like a twister of things melding together, and like eventually you might have something come out at the end. And I'd have to have a look at the notes for it. I'll just say a little bit from it. Is it in there? Is it in there? Right. Yeah, because this relates to INFJ. I'll read a little bit out about what it's like. Vortex synergetic. Right. So this is Galenko's forms of cognition. Right. Okay. What are we looking at here? Vortex synergetic. So I'm looking at VS. Right. VS. The VS types. Right. Okay. What we got there? Oh yeah. Vortex synergetic. Right. Right. Okay. Intellectual sphere. Right. Okay, here we go. II, as if in a kaleidoscope, sees whimsical, iridescent imagery, dissolving, then receding in flux. Then we gotta go. Okay, here we go. Okay. Synergetics, the science of how order emerges from chaos. The word synergy in ancient Greek means concerted action. The concept of synergy continues to be discussed at present. In the West, it is called chaos theory or nonlinear dynamics. For our purposes, it is important to note that it is characterized by so-called dissipative states, non-equilibrium, non-linear, unstable. Now, for the intellectual sphere, it's got characteristic of a vortex is a self-organizing nature, moving like a whirlwind. This manifests mentally as a rapid search for options, tests, and the subsequent screening of variants which do not yield results. It operates on basis of testing. That's what you've talked about as well. Basis of testing, advancing to the goal through trial and error. In a sense, it is comparable to a perpetual lab experiment in the brain. The first advantage of vertical cognition, liveliness and naturalness. It seems to simulate the actual processes occurring in nature. Another advantage, faith in success and luck. Synergetics do not confuse temporary setbacks with error. Synergetics is just like the name of the people with that form of cognition. They will undertake attempt. There we go. I'll say it again. Synergetics do not confuse temporary setbacks with error. They will undertake attempt after attempt until success ultimately comes to them. Do you do that? Like trial and error,
Sort of. Yeah. Sometimes I will give up eventually if it's like too stressful or get too tedious. But in general, yes.
Its chief disadvantage is that the intellectual search is often blind and uneconomical. Another difficulty is its randomness and spontaneity. Synergetic intellect is a kind of chain reaction that catalyzes itself. The mechanism of positive feedback operates. If not curbed, then the concentration of effort first leads to an explosion, followed by a dissipation. Synergetic intellect explains phenomena through substantive reasoning. The very substance of material or substrate, itself generating phenomena through natural movement. In the Aristotle example, the cause of sculpture is the block of marble from which it was made. So from this idea, from this article...
From this totally easy to understand article.
Yes, you will understand that Victor Galenko is very erudite and wicked INTP by like putting all these different philosophers in different forms of cognition. And I need to read it. And once I've mastered this, then Jonathan and I will go through Thus Spake Zarathustra, and we will go, it's a little bit INTJ here, a little bit INFJ here. We will know. We will be able to see the difference. Right. If this holds up. But yeah, I mean, certainly like Linda Behrens, David Kersey, and Victor himself, they do the holographic panoramic. So this is where we take like different angles on the same thing. So it's like, I want to look at it from Enneagram. Oh, I want to look at it from... And you have the same. Yeah, as a left spinning type, you do an INTP shift. Because INFJs can act like INTPs. Because intellectually, they act a little bit like INTPs.
No.
Right, so what I was thinking about, this Vortex synergetic order from chaos...
Yeah.
Where I was thinking, like, so order from the chaos, but then you've got this E1 core, and it's like that is your core that maybe you go back to amongst that whirlwind of chaos.
Possibly. I mean, the thing to remember is if you're right, then I wouldn't really know, would I? Because it would always be true for me. Yeah. So my idea, you'd have to probably better to ask other INFJs then to, or not E1s, before we figure that out. I mean, I would say that I do have... I've always certain ideas of truth and certain certainties that were there. Not even necessarily that I use, that I took for granted.
Right.
It's tricky. I think some of the INFJ descriptions sound quite... I don't think E1 is that uncommon for INFJs. I think a lot of people type as different ones, but they're actually E1s. So I think some of the descriptions, some of this of the INFJs, some of this will creep in. Like some of this stuff that, like when I read, what was it, Personality Junkies, when I read the description of an INFJ.
He's good on intuitive types.
Yeah.
Not so much sensitive types.
Yeah, when I bought his books, bought two of his books, and read a description of it. When I later read E1, some of the stuff that he associates and I associated with INFJs also sounded a bit E1. Can't remember exactly what it is right now, but that was the other thing. So, so many layers to this, so many conversations.
There's a bit here in Kersey's idealist counselor profile, which shows they're complicated on the inside. Although these counselors tend to be private, sensitive people, and thus not usually visible leaders, they work intensely with those close to them, quietly exerting their influence behind the scenes with their families, friends, and colleagues. These seclusive and friendly people are complicated themselves, and so can understand and deal with complex ethical issues and with deeply troubled individuals. And he contrasts that with the INFP, which has a much clearer vision in terms of their convictions and principles are much clearer to the INFP.
I would say mine are clear.
INFJ.
I would say mine are clear, but I'm also more willing to adapt.
Yeah.
Which I think we'll get to, because one of your slides says social subtype non-adaptability. Which is I'm a social subtype.
Right, okay. So we'll get to that. I mean, we will just finish these little bits off, then we'll get to the...
Yeah.
Oh, you said subtype.
Okay, and
not strictly a subtype, is it?
oh
It's an
yes,
intellectual variant.
if you're being pedantic like Mr. Reeson.
Yeah, but that's the only time you've slipped up, because before you I would say subtype. No, Ben.
I would not consider that a slip up. I would just say that's a difference.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I read a quote in Chestnut of an E1 saying that I've never been wrong, except for that one time I thought I was wrong, but turns out I wasn't. So,
Right. And then, so for instance, here we talked a little bit about hypocrisy, I think.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Do you ever think about hypocrisy?
Quite a lot. It actually bothers me. Sometimes it bothers me that other people are bothered by hypocrisy a bit too much. Like there's almost like it's all like they look at the good guys and the bad guys. If the good guys act like a hypocrite, that's worse than if the bad guys do it. I mean, that can be really bad and annoying, but at the same time, that thing like at least the bad guys are honest about being bad or whatever, and that kind of thing can bug me. That can a lot of times I'm not actually honest about being bad. It's just that they're bad, so you take their hypocrisy as just almost like
Given.
take it for granted. Whereas it's like there's, I think everyone is a hypocrite in some way, whether they realise it or not. Everyone's going to be a little bit hypocritical in one way or another. They might not think it's important, and they might not consider it hypocrisy, but it'll be there. I've had a lot of thoughts about hypocrisy over the years, and I've concluded that it's bad, but it's not as important as a lot of people make it out to be. And I don't want to get distracted from. It's like we were talking about with the monks there, or the monastery. I don't want the good ideas to get brought down because of hypocrisy. And I don't just blame the people who are being hypocrites. I blame the people who are judging. It's a two-way street. It's like if you're judging someone an idea because someone else is a hypocrite, it's kind of hypocritical of you. It's not really speak well of you if it's a good idea, and you're just so easily. It's like you're looking for excuses almost at that point.
In a duality, it's interesting. So, do you forgive hypocrisy in ESTPs?
To a point, yeah. I mean, now that I understand ESTPs, in a way, they're not really being hypocritical at all. They're just being true to themselves. Just is it really hypocrisy if they're acting like ESTPs? But
now, Dead Cruz said something about Donald Trump that he can believe something at 9 o'clock and something completely different at noon and something completely different after. And he said that if you put him on a lie detector, he would pass it at all of those 3 different points. And maybe for ESTPs, it's like, oh, I was telling the truth at that point. That's how I felt then.
I can understand.
Right, and they can be. Now, I think that they can be honest in that point of view where they can completely change how they feel and say, hey, I changed my mind.
Yeah,
so they can do that, but I also think they lie as well.
Yes, definitely. I would actually say that's. Thing is, though, I would say that's actually true of everyone, and it's just maybe more obvious with ESTPs, or maybe more natural for them. But I think everyone does it. I tend to look at I tend to try and find out what people meant beyond what they say, and that's why I try and clarify, or I want them to clarify what they meant, or be more careful with their word choice and all that. Because I know how I can figure out what people mean, and that's some of that's being an INFJ, some of that's just experience and study and understanding.
So you can tell when the ESTP is lying.
Not just ESTPs.
No. But yeah, I think part of the thing is that ESTPs are audacious.
ESTPs may actually.
ESTPs like the challenge of perpetuating a line. and not getting caught, the danger, the audacity involved in it. It makes life more exciting for them. It's like, oh, they're testing me. Can I keep this up, this lie? And then if they get found out, it's like, so what? Oh, well.
Yeah,
but they don't like take it to heart. So it's like, it's just being adaptable. It's being utilitarian in terms of using whatever method to get the result. And it goes, yeah, I lied. That's life. You can't go around being tactless.
Yeah. FI types, including INFPs, can do that to the point, but in a slightly different way, because they'll be more of a passive aggressive sense, like they misunderstood the information, and then when it's clarified, and they get really aggressive with it. But when it's clarified, it's like, oh well. I think that's almost like the type 1 resentment there, which again everyone's got. Technically, everyone has one in their Enneagram type because everyone's got every type. It's like, even if you're not on type 1, you can still resent that other people are acting in a certain way or all that, and you can act that way too.
Maybe ESTPs can feel that as well because their FI is so weak. They can get.
It can be. They do have a
insecure about how people feel about them.
Yeah, they do have a. ESTPs and ENTPs. They do get. I have seen. They do get. They have FI as there, and they can be very sensitive about it when it's touched. I
imagine if they have enough situations where they've completely misread a situation, or people have reacted as they're not expected. It's like that could maybe affect them if enough of those situations build up where they can become. It's that thing either overly assuming or overly suspicious, where they don't know how they stand with people.
Yeah, there's more of a. I think you just described the type 6 perfectly there. But yeah. Anyway.
So we're on anger now, I think. I think we're on anger. Is this righteous indignation? Maybe they should put righteous indignation.
Well, it depends what's variant.
Anger as well, yeah. I suppose it's better.
Variant or subtype, if you prefer, or variant, depending on your being pedantic. Like self-preservation ones would be angry about. They're more angry about getting the job right or wrong, or getting getting the whole details right, whatever, getting the house in order and stuff. That's more of a self-preservation one. As a sexual one's more about, it can be about relationships, it can be about causes. Sexual ones are a bit more of moral entitlement at times, with Ayn Rand being the ultimate unhealthy sexual one, to the point where you moralize it. So it's not necessarily righteous anger. It can be anger about just things not being right, whatever, or anger stemming from resentment, as I mentioned. The thing is, would you say I'm an angry person? Would you say I look angry?
No.
Yeah, see, the type 8, 9, and 1 are anger types, but they're not necessarily the angriest types. The angriest types are actually supposed to be a sexual 6 and a sexual 1. Sexual 4, sorry. And they don't. The body types in anyone, they don't necessarily enjoy being angry, and they're always aware that they're angry. 8's the most obvious about their anger. 9's trying to avoid their anger. They try and avoid things that make them angry if they can. 1s are at odds with their anger. So it's called reaction formation. It's basically when I feel angry and I notice that I put a stop to it, or I challenge it. I'm challenging my anger because anger can get in the way. Anger can cost you objectivity. Anger can cost you control. type ones tend to feel that anger is wrong, and that's why anger is their passion, because it's wrong, but it's there. It's in the background.
Is it also a loss of? You see it as a loss of control, a loss
Yeah.
of discipline.
Yes, and I think it can annoy me when other people get angry. I get angry when other people get angry. That's the thing. That's almost like they're doing it or they're not being fair to other people or whatever.
And you get angry with yourself.
Something, yes, sometimes. I think in general I do not come across as an angry person at all. And I remember seeing Star Wars when I was younger and listening to Yoda say about anger, fear, aggression, or the dark sides, or the dark side of the Force of the day. And I thought, yes, that's actually true. Hey, yeah, I can see where that's coming from. And again, also, being Christian or reading about other religions as well, because I did that when I was younger, where anger comes up as a bad thing or is implied to be bad, or worried about being angry hypocritically as well, and also learning about how being judgmental can be bad and being moralistic can be bad itself. These are all reasons why I could be suspicious of anger. Yeah, but it could also, again, there's more of a inner conflict there because anger can be a tool. It can be a tool for change. It can be a fountain of creativity. Yep. But it could also be seen as such when it isn't, or when it can be very badly misused.
That's the thing.
I think when I think about it, I tend to think of anger as a weapon of last resort, or something I keep in the background. Whereas people in other types might use it more readily. However, like I said, the sexual six, for instance, does tend to be more of, or sexes in general, but especially the sexual six, they might be more comfortable with anger and more happy to be angry because they'll see it as if they're not coming from a place of strong conviction, they're coming from a place of doubt and uncertainty, and they're looking for certainty, and they might see it and they're sympathising with the underdog, and there's a sense of powerlessness. So when they're experiencing anger, they're experiencing it as punching up, as it's okay for them to be angry because they're seeing themselves or whoever they're representing as the weaker party. Whereas I'm coming from a place of strong conviction. I'm starting with certainty. So I'm more, and this is where the good and the perfect come in, because I think the good is easy. It's the perfect I'm aiming for.
You mentioned sexual 4.
Yes.
How are they angry?
Well, that's the case of the sexual 4 romanticizing their dark side. Some descriptions of the sexual 4 make them sound like absolute psychos. I will say.
I'm a sexual 4.
I know. I'm just. See, this is why I'm saying you might be a sexual 5. They sound nicer based on the descriptions. Okay. Like Naranjo, Claudio Naranjo is one of the the original Enneagram guys. I think he was actually a student of Picasso. That's what I read. I actually saw a post by Catherine Favre, or how you pronounce it. She did a workshop with Naranjo, and apparently in it he said a lot of things in it. But one thing he says was he thought Hitler was a sexual 4. Hitler's probably a sexual 6, but he thinks a sexual 4, and he associates sexual 4s with arrogance and superiority, and they're not ashamed of their sadness, they're in denial of it. They can have, especially when they're unhealthy, it's almost like they've got a superiority complex, and they can be stalkery and entitled and so on. So with their relationship to anger, it's more like anger. This would be the 4 romanticizing their emotions and their dark side. So anger is real, it's raw, it's pure, it's creative. There's so much you can do with anger. That's based on those descriptions of a sexual 4. I don't know if other descriptions might be different. but that's something to consider. Like I said, that's some of the descriptions of certain subtypes or certain types can make them sound very bad, and the sexual 4 at times does sound like bad and proud of it. So that's a thing. But a type 1 is not necessarily like type 1s are not. Their relationship with anger is different. It's there, it's real. It's not. It can be in the way though.
To me, a sexual 4 like that sounds like an INFJ that's gone ESTP.
Or maybe an INFP that's gone ESTJ or something. Or, like, it's a very... yeah, it can be...
I think that'd be a good thing. INFP that goes ESTJ. I would see that as a good thing.
Well, obviously I don't. I'm in the INFJ. ESTJ.
Yeah.
I could... yeah, I mean, unhealthy ESTPs or unhealthy ESTJs, they can both be bad, so it's not... yeah. Either way, the description of sexual 4s are somewhat interesting, and I've seen... there's another thing on Facebook where someone posted an article about someone who was a woman who was almost like a serial romantic stalker, where they would deliberately pursue relationships with guys who, I think sometimes they were married, sometimes they were not, and they're really intensely devoted, but then they moved on to someone else, almost like a female sexual predator, and they were arguing that this person... there was an argument whether this person was a sexual 2 or a sexual 4.
Right. In the Beatrice Chestnut book, how big is the description of the sexual 4?
Yeah, well, I'll find it for you right now.
Because depending on how comprehensive it is, that will determine whether or not I'll buy the book. Because I would pretty much be buying it for how much it says about the E4.
Okay, let me...
the price has already come down a little bit. I mean, I checked today and it was about £11 used and new. And I think before it was about 17.
I think they're all about this. I'm seeing my Kindle now, so...
yeah, because I think we said they've not done it by tri-type, because then that would be volumes and volumes and volumes. But it's just sort of like done it by instinct.
Well, no, most of it is actually... most of our descriptions for all of our types are actually about the type in general. It's only towards the end that she deals with the subtypes, but they are more extensive than... like, I had the Enneagram... the Understanding the Enneagram by Reese and Hudson. I had that up. Their descriptions of the subtype, of the variants, are much shorter than hers. Right. There's only a page and a bit, whereas hers is a few pages of each subtype. It's not in a great deal of detail, but it's decent enough. She does... the main thing she's really good for is... she is actually a professional psychologist, and she does talk about the inner psychology of each type and all their defense mechanisms and motivations and things like that. So
how many pages are there on the Enneagram 4?
Nah. Oh, go to the start of it. We'll find out. I think it's about 20 or 30 pages, maybe 40. Okay, 267. 267. Ah! 267, 287, 297. Yeah, but between 30 and 40 pages. Probably per chapter, I would say. So each one's about 30 odd pages. Maybe a little over 30.
Right. So the next one is interesting one. Serenity.
Yeah. My mom says, even when I was really young, I started this attraction to the notion of balance or balance in all things, and I do relate to that feeling of inner peace when I'm on a good day, like just where everything feels all right, and you don't have to worry, and or why were you caring about this stuff? It's like a sense of inner peace and calm.
Does it relate to like an NI trance state, or is it a different thing?
May relate to that. It can also just be just feeling really good and not looking at the world and look at all the things that can make you angry or things like that and feel like everything's okay or everything will work out. I can't explain because the thing is, this may be true of all types for all their health. It's not necessarily something you can always maintain, or it's something you would have to actively maintain. So, on a normal day, you may not be in that state, or you could be in that state, but just you keep reading stuff or you keep experiencing stuff that frustrates you and brings you down. External forces. So,
is Chestnut good on disintegration and integration?
she's pretty decent on it, yeah. I think. I mean, or does she? Actually, I could be wrong. I don't know if she deals with it at all. No check. It could be confusing with Reese and Hudson. No, they're quite decent.
Do you think they're good on integration and disintegration?
Yeah, they're quite decent. They're a bit short on it, but they do the job.
So why would an Enneagram 1 go to Enneagram 4 when under stress?
Envy. It's the resentment again. It's the or it's the feeling. This is why you romanticize your dark sides. And remember that type ones have very strong principles, a very strong conscience. They do think in terms of right and wrong, good and evil, and all that. And if you think in those terms, they can have this sort of attraction to evil because it's wrong, or because, or again, you could see how other people do things wrong and all that, but seem to have it better, or be not as bothered by things. So you can be it's a temptation thing. It's like you're tempted to lead a double life. You'll think about leading a double life or forgetting you're older. It's like you're seeing it. Your dark side is the dark side of life is a morbid attraction to it. Like again, Star Wars thing. Like, so just be the dark side. This sort of thing. Is like you don't have to. It's this temptation to let go, or to explore something that you've got this intimate relation to, even if it's an adversarial one. So there's yeah.
So when the Enneagram 1 goes to 7, is it like they learn to lighten up?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, when they go to average 7, it's more like they become a bit more fuck it all. part of my language. When I was when I was younger, I almost never swore at all. I'm making up for it. And I still hardly ever swear, but when I was younger, I really never swore, and everyone in the school swore. All the kids swore. But I was like kind of, I don't swear. I'm proud of that. So
an E1 thing.
yes, exactly. Never swore, never smoked, never always.
And there you actually might have been glad. Everybody else not as good as me.
Exactly. But that's not healthy one behavior. Even
No, it's not.
it's more of it's actually a social one thing. Social ones can catch themselves feeling a bit superior, but it's not. It's something they like.
Oh, I've got an interesting. So, if an E1 is in a situation where the people around them
Uh,
are also like perfectionistic, and you're like judging yourself against these other people,
definitely.
you might think, "Oh, you're so perfect." Like if you're surrounded by so many perfect people.
Yeah. Ah. Yeah. Anyway, with 7 security, that's more. When it's average, it really is just kind of like wasting your time or procrastinating and doing other stuff and all that, which is probably what I'm in right now, to be honest. Healthy.
Oh, thank you.
No, I mean in life. My life, not in here, this particular moment. This is really good. I think we're having a really good conversation right now.
Very good.
But at this stage in life, it's just things like, stuff in your face with food or watching films, playing games or whatever, wasting your time on the internet when you could and should be doing something more productive. But healthy type 1 integrated 7 is more you've learned to really enjoy life, you've made the right time for it, but you know where to make the exceptions, you're showing good judgment. It's satisfying.
Taking opportunities?
Yes, and taking the right opportunity. And taking the right opportunity.
Interestingly enough, in the Model G INFJ profile, in the Control NE, it says that the INFJ will advise other people to take opportunities and risks, but they don't do it themselves.
I can understand that. Yeah, because that's more a sense of. I wouldn't necessarily say that's being hypocritical so much as. Firstly, I know I should, but also I'm worried that I can't. I'm worried that I'm not. Okay, well, actually, I think it's almost like I'm putting other people on a pedestal. Like they're more capable of taking opportunities than I am. Whatever, like it'll work out for them, it won't work out for me.
So you can see how your ESTP dual could help you with taking risks and exciting actions.
Well, I suppose I could always be worried that they'll, stick the knife in your back, depending on the ESTP, or maybe they just want me to do something that I don't want to do. Which,
yeah, that's the thing.
The thing is, 8, 9, and 1, the boy types. They're about power. They are about power and control, and they're about controlling themselves and their environment. But they're also concerned about their environment controlling them. They don't like even more than a head type doesn't like to be controlled, but the boy types don't like to be controlled either. The difference is the confidence in yourself to control it back, or to resist, or to impose your own thing, your own sense of order on it. Yeah.
Right, is that readable to you? Or do I need to go into each block?
It's readable. Yeah, it's definitely readable. Okay. Okay, self-disciplined and self-preservation ones. Self-disciplined and independent workers who are seldom careless, find it hard to express emotion, or just relax and have fun. I wonder if that's...
Sounds like an ISTJ.
Yeah, most ISTJs will be self-pres. I want to see if Chestnut is different. Give me a second.
This is Susan Rhodes 2010.
Sorry?
No, I was just saying this is Susan Rhodes 2010, but you'll probably be able to see that on the share screen. Oh, now we've got 2 viewers. Wow, hello, thank you, viewers.
Chester's a bit different. She says that the outward result of a self-preservation one is an excessively gentle, decent, and kind person. In the quest to perfect themselves, self-preservation ones believe it's bad to be angry, and so make a virtue of being tolerant, forgiving, and sweet whenever possible. Underneath, these ones are very angry but can control it. Under pressure, however, this one's anger may leak out as irritation, resentment, frustration, or self-righteousness. It's called worrying and can be confused with a type 6. I think all these things are not accounted for the stackings as well. Like, I can relate to the social one, but I can also relate to the self-preservation one. And self-pres second, and I've said that self-pres, your second instinct is the one you're most comfortable with. So I guess I relate sort of to all 3 of them, but I think social and self-pres are the ones to relate to the most. But there are different competing descriptions. The main thing with self-preservation ones is that they're, like all self-preservation types, they're more focused on their immediate concerns, their job, their career, their home, their family, maybe their body, maybe they want to be in perfect shape. I've read some that talk about how they're really good. Some are self-preservation ones can be really good in with vitamins and health and things like that. And see, there's also a thing where all the one descriptions a lot of time talk about how they're hard workers. That just makes me feel really ashamed of myself because I'm not. That's one element of that I need more of.
That's for the ISTJs, though.
Yeah, hopefully. That's what I tell myself. It's also my 1-wing 9, and we're a bit more relaxed and laid back. In fact, I got something up about that. This is from Personality Cafe, and someone's comparing and contrasting 1-wing 9s with 1-wing 2s. So externally, 1-wing 9s are more relaxed, giving off a grounding paternal presence. 1-wing 2s tend to be more tense, rigid. 1-wing 2s expend more energy. 1-wing 9s will speak up if they feel like there is a significant problem, but they don't do so in a way that exerts a lot of energy. 1-wing 2s like to debate more. 1-wing 9s find it tiring after a while, especially if the opposition is being belligerent or disrespectful. 1-wing 2s are typically more critical of ideas, of details. 1-wing 9s are more big picture and more likely to view minutiae as insignificant. 1-wing 9s have an aversion to excessive displays of emotion. 1-wing 2s wear emotion more in their sleeves. Similarly, 1-wing 9s avoid. I'm not sure if I agree with that because it's more of an INFJ thing. But 1-wing 9s avoid emotional appeals when trying to make converts. 1-wing 2s readily resort to emotional appeals and sensationalism. View the human element as essential. Kind of in the middle there. 1-wing 9s channel their anger more efficiently. They tire more easily and are less verbose and action-oriented than 1-wing 2s in terms of aggression. 1-wing 9s is similar to I like this. 1-wing 9s aggression is similar to a samurai, making a few swift, powerful, and precise cuts that quickly sever their opponent and end the altercation. They can be really fucking scary during this short period. Yeah, I really relate to that, and I really like it. That's my ideal fantasy of ending debates and cutting down arguments. It is quite scary. Quite
suggestive.
For short. Yeah, it's like I can imagine doing that, and I think I've probably imagined it when I've done it, but I think I've done it before as well. Was I just sitting down and explaining everything wrong with what you're saying, what you're doing, and cutting detail, and also being an INFJ helps. I can get right into their psychological stuff, but 1-wing 2's aggression is more fiery and longer lasting once it's turned on. 1-wing 9s tend to mind their own business more. 1-wing 2 is more willing to get in your face and put up a protest. 1.2s tend to view 1.9s as complacent and dispassionate. 1.9s tend to view 1.2s as destructive and irrational. 1.2s have a stronger superego influence them more likely to appeal to a person's guilt or sense of duty obligation. 1.9s may do as a little, but they typically find copious amounts of unsavory. The 9 wing lessens the pull of the superego and allows them to be more mellow and less controlling. So my general impression of what I just said is that 1.9s, I can relate to this, 1.9s have less energy and they want to ration it more and they try to develop their stamina, whereas 1.2s are more out there, more doing stuff, and are more, or feel like they have more energy. Now, being an INFJ, I do know that there are INFJs who are 1.9 and 1.2, and some of that description of 1.9s would fit the INFJs who are 1.2, and vice versa. Some of the 1.2 stuff sounds more like me, like I was displays of emotion. But this is what I think of when I see these descriptions. They're not accounting for the function types, and they're not even accounting for the wings, because 1.9 is more withdrawn. They are more private. They are more. They can be more laid back, and they are more short bursts of energy sort of people. So that's the thing to take into consideration, the wings and the function types when you're reading these things. Sexual, fiery, impassioned evangelists with the courage of their convictions tend to be impulsive and jealous, but also brave and determined. Okay, and social, which is my type. The great arbiters of what is right. It establishes of rules strict but fair, stern but unyielding in the face of social pressure. I'm not sure. Not sure how much I agree with that. Sometimes I can look like I've yielded, but I haven't. Other times I might fool myself into thinking I didn't yield, but I did. But that's also the thing, is your first instinct is kind of like a sore spot, and if it gets damaged, it can really hurt. So if you're a social first of any type and you're facing social pressure, that can actually be your sore spot. It can hurt a bit because you don't want to lose friendships or connections over something. So that's an interesting thing to think about. Any questions? Did I ramble too much?
No, that's fine. You've got the. Did you talk about the sexual ones and the social ones in this graphic I have?
Sexual ones. Well, what Chestnut describes is she used the example of conquistadors and of manifest destiny and of sort of moral entitlement, or the sexual ones are more like 8s, but they're actually ones. They have that go for it mentality, that sort of lust for life, and it's sort of like they want. Type ones tend to think a lot in terms of reward, or earning things. Like they want to earn the good things in life. That can be that can be the dark side at times, because it can feel like when they're less than healthy, there can be a borderline between, are they doing these things for the right reasons, or are they doing it in expectation of the reward? Sexual ones, I think in particular, can be about the reward thing, or the right to say. They can also be about reforming their partner, like making their relationship. They were about wanting their partner to shape up and take their advice and be the way they want to be. I mean, Chestnut gives the example of a sexual one who says that, because she gives quotes of different case studies, more or less, and her sexual one says that she felt that if her husband didn't measure up to her standards or didn't take her advice, she would be right to leave him, just for not doing what she felt he should do. I will say also, I think I mentioned this, Ayn Rand is considered an unhealthy sexual one. And when you look at Ayn Rand, it's almost like she's taking the sense of moral entitlement and turned it into a philosophy or a rule book. Like, it's morally right to be entitled. It's morally right to be selfish and do these things and be true to yourself and get what you want with all the vigour, as long as you obey these certain rules and so on. That would be the darker side of sexual one.
So if you talk about social one, and then what we could do because I'm about to pass out, in part two we could like cover, because this is a big one, so that we could, and then cover this one in part two. Okay. Otherwise, this hangout would end up being about 5 hours. And actually, it would end up being 8 hours, because I would have fallen asleep, and the hangout would have gone on, and then it would have cut off after 8 hours.
All right. Social ones are more. Sexual ones are more like 8. Sexual ones are more like 8. Social ones are more like 5s, and that's probably one of the reasons I've taped as a 5 sometimes. They're more like they're thinking, they were drawn from society, but they're taking like observers of it, observers of society, observers of groups, and they're forming criticisms of whatever things should be, of what's the right way to do things. And this is where this unconscious sense of superiority can come in. Now, they don't like feeling superior, and we don't like it when we catch ourselves feeling superior, but it can be there, and it comes from that sense of sort of like assuming how, or trying to figure out how people should be, how people should live, how society should be, and so on. Any questions?
No. So we've covered social subtype of Enneagram 1. And like I said, there will be a part 2, and we could maybe cover this tomorrow. And
sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Because then we can go over that.
Yeah.
Because that'll take a while, and because I'm just in that. So I was just saying that I was just going to say to Jeff, maybe review 2 episodes tomorrow. 2 episodes of B7 tomorrow. Right. So folks, yeah. So I'll make a note of which slides we've been through. So it's this is my trademark. So it's good night from me. I sort of like what Waters' world does. He goes like this: my name is Waters, and this is my world. So I go like this, and it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. All right.